the story goes that the Rice family was in their Prius, mint green, seat belted, of course. And they were about to go to see some relatives in the big city. And Mom looked back and said, "Susie, what did you learn from the religious education program today?" And Susie said, "Well, it was all about Passover. And Moses was this big guy, played college football, and tackled the Pharaoh. And while the Pharaoh was down, everybody, all the Israelites gathered together and started running towards the river. And when they got to the river, the Corps of Engineers was called by Moses, and they put up a bridge. And they went across the bridge, and Moses called in the air support, and they bombed the bridge, and the Egyptians could not come over, and Israelites went on to freedom and liberation." There was a long pause in the car, a long silence, as you can imagine. Mom said, "That's what your Sunday school teacher taught you?" And Susie was like, "No, but if I told you the way they told it, you'd never believe it." The way they probably told it was that the Pharaoh, big mean Pharaoh, was worried that this tribe of Israelites were going to overcome the population of Egypt and decided to enslave the Israelites. And in time, a little child named Moses was born. And even though all the firstborn were to be killed, the daughter of the Pharaoh saved Moses. Moses grew up, confronted Pharaoh, and said, "Let my people go. Let my people go." It's probably a phrase you've heard before. Let my people go. Pharaoh said no, and a series of 10 plagues came through. And the Pharaoh, who lost his own child in that last plague, said, "Okay, you guys can go. Get out of here. Just go immediately. Go." And then, as pharaohs are wont to do, the Pharaoh changed his mind. Moses and everybody else. The Pharaoh changed his mind and decided that a whole bunch of soldiers would go after the Israelites. They came to the sea, the Red Sea. The sea parted with God's help, and the Israelites went into freedom. The sea went back. The Egyptians couldn't get there. And after 40 years in the wilderness, the Israelites came to the land of milk and honey. That's the story. Right? Do I know if any of that story is true? Nope. Do I care if any of that story is true? Nope. Because I don't go to the Bible for history. I don't go for history lessons. I go to PBS for history lessons. I go to Google for history lessons. I go to people who take 2 classes of AP history for history lessons. Right? What that story says to me is that the human condition is one in which collectively and individually we long for liberation and freedom. And how we get there is based on our cultural context. But there are 2 parts of that. The first is let my people go. Let my people go. Everywhere there is a sense of solidarity in every land. Whenever somebody is oppressed, there is the cry, let my people go. And for those of us who have ears to hear, we join in that cry so that we recognize that no one is free until all of us are free. The second is that great story about the Red Sea. Now, in this story, there's not a bridge that's built and the air support comes and takes it out. But in the story, Moses and God part the Red Sea. But I want you for just a minute to think about the courage and the bravery it took for that first person to dip their toe in the sea. You see, liberation is not without courage and bravery and vulnerability and fear. But none of the story of liberation and freedom could happen without that first brave soul dipping their toe into the water. And so what do we get? What song do we get from that tradition? Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. God's going to trouble the water. Right? That's the great prayer. That's the great hope. Right? If we can get our own courage towards liberation, that the water will be troubled and the way will come clear. I don't need a supernatural God or goddess, right? Or any other word or image to recognize how powerful it is to take that first step into that sea. And our collective longing for liberation and freedom. There's something else in that Passover story, and I didn't notice it too well until I read it again. It's in Exodus 12 or 13. And in that story, they leave a particular part, these Israelites on their way to freedom, they leave a particular part of the journey, and it says, by day there was a pillar of cloud that helped guide them, that never left their side. And by night there was a pillar of fire. And I never really noticed that before. I had to read it for seminary for sure, right? And I've read it many times because I too grew up Baptist, and boy, we like to read the Bible. And so I've read that a number of times, but I've never really noticed those pillars before. So what it says to me that in stories of collective and individual liberation and freedom, there is something guiding our way. A pillar of cloud, a pillar of fire, and it won't leave our side. And what is that? What is that? What is that? Right now, trans kids and drag queens and Jewish people are being harmed. You know, Jewish people are being harmed. There's anti-Semitic, there's Asian, there's all kinds of things going on right now that call forth our call, our cry for collective liberation and freedom, and to stand against those forces of hate and divisiveness. And so those pillars of clouds, those pillars of fire, I think, is a world in which all might be saved, despite their self-identities, despite how they've come into the world, that all might be saved. That's a very Thich Nhat Hanh thing to say, right? That all might be well, that all might be safe, that all might be free. And so that's really stuck with me. That's really stuck with me. And then, the other bit of religious story we're celebrating today is the story of Jesus coming into Jerusalem on a donkey for Passover. And on the other side of town, there's a big military parade, big, strong military parade. All of the powerful there, all the mighty are there, all of the glitz and glamour of power and empire and strength. And Jesus and his little ragtag community, just like that ragtag community that left Egypt, right? And said, enough is enough, we're out of here. Jesus and his little ragtag community come into Jerusalem for Passover. And their parade is just a little group of outcasts. But in that group was such love and such vision that even as that week goes on and Friday comes, After a night of sharing a meal and washing feet, Friday comes and Jesus is crucified. And all of the despair of that little ragtag community, women and men who made up that community, that beloved community. Friday comes, the execution. Saturday, the great silence. And then Sunday, those women come to the tomb. Those women come to the tomb and say, where's our teacher? Where's our beloved? Where's our rabbi? Where's our friend? And some angels come and say, why are you looking? I love this line. Why are you looking for the living among the dead? Right? Both that story of Passover, that ragtag group getting out of Egypt, are looking towards a great vision. A cloud of, a pillar of cloud, a pillar of fire that's leading them to freedom. They see clearly the vision cast before them. And these women come to the empty tomb, and they're looking for Jesus, their teacher and their friend. And he's not there. And the angels say, why do you look for the living? Like, why do you look for the, what is it? Why are you looking in this way? Right? Love will not be suppressed. Love will not be cast out. The vision that Jesus had of beloved community is too strong for any kind of state-sanctioned execution. That can't squash this. So today, as we celebrate Easter and Passover, as we celebrate the coming of spring, the coming of new life, the returning to be born and reborn again, over and over, we look to that which is actually life-giving, to beloved community, to peace, to justice, to a world where all are safe. And there are no guarantees that any such place will ever exist. But we make little examples of it, little models of it. Just as Jesus did walking in on that donkey, saying to the strong empire, you have all that military might, you've got all that power, but look what love can create, something greater than death. And Moses in that ragtag community who said, enough is enough. You know who I'm reminded of when I think of those stories? What's the most ragtag community that stood up for liberation and justice in the face of overwhelming oppression and domination? You know who I think about? And this is going to age me, so I apologize in advance. The uprising at Stonewall, right? Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard that analogy? That the Israelites telling Pharaoh, your power is great, awesome, but it's not going to keep us down. And Jesus saying to the Roman Empire, oh, your power is great. You got the big military parade over there. But no, you're not going to keep us down. You can execute me, it's not going to keep it. Love is bigger than that. In Stonewall, those trans women and homeless youth and queer people of all kinds who had, in New York City in 1960s, had been raided, gay bars, a place of liberation and freedom. These gay bars were raided over and over again. And this ragtag group of drag queens and trans women and queer kids were living on the streets. Nope. We're on the march to freedom. We're going to wade in the water. Nothing's going to turn us around. Right? That's the Easter story for me. Let's live into it.